Good evening. Welcome to our interview with Shane Palacat Nelsen. HULI PAC was birthed from a shared drive to rework our system by speaking for āina-based equity-focused leadership for our Hawai'i Island community. Now more than ever, we need leaders who are willing to circle back to our roots and instill real change in our community from Kona to Ka'u to Hilo to Hawi. The timing is now to HULI the system. Conducting our interviews tonight are Alexia Akbe and Michaela Okuchi. I'd like to introduce Shane Palacat Nelsen. He's running for County Council District 6. Shane, would you like to introduce yourself, please? Thank you.
Mahalo, Velina mai kako, aloha mai kako, everyone. Mahalo to HULI PAC and everyone who's putting all of this together, for giving me this opportunity to share some of my perspectives. I was born and raised in Kealakekua Bay my entire life, a generational resident. My family's been part of Kona, parts of Ka'u for many generations. I grew up farming, ranching, fishing, living off the āina, like most everyone did in South Kona, as a supplement to our economic household income. And I graduated from Konawaina High School, very proud graduate, and attended the Hawaii Pacific University. I studied business management. And then for about 15 years after that, I was involved with the hospitality industry, starting off as a financial analyst, moving into operational management. Then my real passion was really community development and advocacy. And so I was able to utilize my experiences in business when I worked for the Office of the Governor as his liaison for West Hawaii. And currently for the past 10 years, I've been doing public policy advocacy for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. And very excited, along with my friends and family, very excited to run for County Council District 6 office. Ready to serve, yes.
Mahalo, Shane. Thanks so much. I guess that dovetails into our first question. What has inspired you to run for County Council right now?
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you so much for that question. I've been involved in the Native Hawaiian community for the past 10 years as far as public policy, and taking a look at how not just Native Hawaiians benefit from Native Hawaiian rights, but also the entire community and how the entire community benefits from that. And as mentioned earlier, HULI is looking for leaders that are circling back to the roots or to the foundation of things. And I feel that being advocating for the host culture, for the āina resources, and how that can turn into economic development structures or frameworks. I thought that more important, working at the county level, this is where it's very impactful. I've worked at the state legislative level as well, as an advocate. And although they prime county level sort of policies, it's really the county government that actually has a stronghold impact on how we govern our resources, or be able to access these resources.
Thank you.
Really interesting.
Kelly, our next question.
Wonderful, Shane. Thank you so much. So my first question for you is, have you advocated for your community, and what community projects have you worked on or been involved in?
Yeah, I've been advocating since I was in high school, for a very long time. And some of there's a lot of projects that I worked on, small ones to big ones. So I'll kind of take a look at the ones that I'm working on right now and kind of move back a little bit. I got a few minutes to do this. So right now I'm actually working on a really important project, which is coral restoration and coral resilience in South Kona. I've been working with the Department of Aquatic Resources as well as the Nature Conservancy Organization. And we're pulling together a plan that includes cultural and traditional knowledge, as well as practices alongside of scientific research to address the coral depletion in South Kona heading into Ka'u. And really important, coral reef gives us the ability to understand our resource, the environmental cycles, the ecosystems that actually feed all of us. The life of the coral sustains the life of everything. If that is poor, then everything is probably going through some hardships and some hard times. And so we're looking at data right now that there's only 3% of coral life in the South Kona region. And so it's really important that we start really quick on these types of projects to address not just water quality, but also affluent that runs into the ocean, and how that impacts farming communities as well as ranching communities, because a lot of times we need to sustain our farm, but yet all the things that we do on the land will impact the ocean as well as the fisheries and that food source as well. So how do we bring balance together? And so that's one of my most intriguing projects that I'm very excited for and working on right now. We just got some federal funding for that as well. Another project that I'm also working on right now is the watershed and flood control through my membership with the county's Kona Community Development Action Planning Committee, the CDP. And so working and understanding how watersheds actually impact our land, and not just land, but also housing as well. If we're taking a look at developing housing, we have to take a look at our landscape, our geography, and where would be the best place to invest in housing, because we can't be putting people in areas that 5-10 years from now, they're just going to get flooded and yeah, just much more. We'll just add more to the negative impact versus trying to solve the problems. Yeah, I think those are the two main big projects that I'm working on right now. There's other small ones that I'm doing, like reforestation stuff. I do a lot of āina work, by the way, even on Koho'olawe and stuff like that.
That's incredible.
Sorry, did I answer the full question?
You did. Yes, that was wonderful. Thank you, Alexia.
Yeah, really interesting, Shane. Thank you. The next question is, which present political leaders do you feel you have the most common with? That could be Hawaii County or state. And in which way?
The most, I'm sorry, what did you say?
Which political leaders do you feel that you have the most in common with right now in Hawaii state, or I guess could be federal or global as well?
So I'll pick on someone that you know, she's come across as an environmentalist, and she's actually a North Kona representative. She hasn't been married. It's Nicole Lowen that I feel that has always done so much āina work, environmental policies that I enjoyed over the years that she's been involved in legislation. I think that we can align, like at the state level, we align. On the county level, I've aligned with past political leaders such as Karen Eoff, Angel Pelago, and currently Miley David, regarding making sure that we're providing appropriate access for community, I think community to resources, and making sure that they're efficiently distributed throughout the islands and not just within their districts. And I feel like those leaders were really great in pulling things off, as far as creating policies to allow for county government to effectuate the community's needs. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Shane.
Mm-hmm.
My next question for you is, what do you see as the 3 most pressing issues facing your district, and what possible political actions can be taken to relieve those issues?
Yeah, great question. 3 most, wow. That's a short list. Nah, just joking. So
this is where you go and roll out the big list.
Yeah. You know, the 3 most critical issues, of course, the first one is housing. And when I look at housing and how I've already had conversations in community groups regarding housing, we're looking at ways on how we can retain our residents who have knowledge of the land, because if they leave, then our community starts to break down as far as knowledge base and sustainability, and how to be sustainable within an island construct versus a continent construct. And so I feel that we got to keep our generations here. And that's through housing. And shelter is one of the main reasons why we need to make sure that the next generation has the hope and the opportunity to provide shelter as they start their own families. That opportunity right now, when I'm looking at my nieces and nephews who are graduating from high school, is almost gone. They're like, where are you going to live, uncle? I got to live with you. And it's like, okay, it's okay, but it's not okay. Like there's problems here. And so housing to me is one of the highest priorities. The second priority is kupuna care. As we look at, the generation, the elder generation, and how we, my generation needs to be able to work. Each household is not able to provide kupuna care within the family construct traditionally, where one member would be able to stay home and take care of a kupuna or an elder. Both are required, or all are required, to go to work just to keep a living, just to keep their homes, just to have food. And so kupuna care is going to be an issue. How do we care for this, for our kupuna? Particularly in my district, in District 6, where resources are very spread out. And having these conversations of how do we provide this service so that it's acceptable to the traditions and the customs of people that live in my district. We're plantation people, we're fishing villages. They're not accustomed to putting their kupuna in care homes. And so we have to take a look at how we would afford for that, and provide that ability so that they can have appropriate services. And then the third issue that I would consider is about really how do we store it and manage our natural resources, and having access to water, the ability to have access to quality water, not just any kind of water, but also having access to land, having access to be able to farm. Those are some of the issues that I feel that are pressing, particularly in my district, South Kona, all the way through Volcano Village. Yeah.
Thanks, Shane. And I'm going to give you some time to talk a little bit more about affordable housing and housing in general. What paradigm shifting solutions do you think that we have at the county level to ensure that the rising real estate prices and values do not correspondingly increase the cost of housing, the cost of living, and essentially, as you mentioned, pushing locals and the generations that have been here out of Hawai'i Island and Hawaii in general?
Yeah, there's so many different approaches to this, and they're all kind of required to happen sort of synonymously. Like it needs to be synchronized. One way is taking a look at inclusive zoning, where people are able to build multiple units, or even take a look at how we can develop easily in these inclusive zonings areas. I know that it's an issue it's an issue statewide. It's not just an issue, or even countrywide. But when we're taking a look at how we have land use and affordable living conditions, we also have to work with the state, and the state government and the county government sometimes have different opinions or different viewpoints on how they address affordable housing or just housing in general. I think when we take a look at real estate, as we all know, that it's just far beyond the capacity of the median income or the wages that are provided for people, particularly in my district. They travel all the way to Kona from Ka'u just to work a decent job, but that's still not enough to purchase a home at $500,000. And so we're looking at policies that would probably help. I would definitely collaborate in order to do the paradigm shift, is be able to collaborate with housing agencies and other not just developers, but looking at other options on how we can keep costs down, but creating policies that would allow for permitting of different types of housing units that are still safe and affordable. I feel that sometimes, even speaking to residents in my district most recently, they're saying that sometimes it's the permitting process that actually stalls them, which increases the cost of their home at some point, because the cost of goods end up rising during their permitting process. And so taking a look at how we can do that, being part of the Kona CDP, where we're looking at how we, basically develop, density development versus rural development versus urban development. Those conversations come up in the Kona CDP, which advises the planning director. And when we talk about density development, everyone gets all shocked, and we don't want Oahu on our island at all. We don't want Maui to happen on our island at all. And so how do we learn from that? And I feel that we have to be able to collaborate with others and to learn from others as to what they did and how we can improve our housing issues on our island. As far as bringing the cost down, yeah, that's going to be a lot of work, and that's a collaborative effort on the state and federal level in order to be able to make it affordable. I shouldn't say bringing the cost down, but to make it affordable. Yeah.
Thank you. Would you support any change to the property tax kind of protocol by types of housing to increase
Absolutely.
accessibility?
So working for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, we have our own tax exemption, which is the kuleana tax exemption for qualified individuals or families who are beneficiaries of the trust and or kuleana landholders. I also watched how Maui addressed their issues as far as land tax exemptions for residents or generational long-term residents. And these are not just for Native peoples, but these are people who've been in the islands for generations. And there's scale models there, as well as on Kauai, in the county of Kauai, that actually did the same as well. So looking at ways on how we can decrease property tax, but not just decrease them, but also maintain a level of property tax so that the county is able to still capitalize what they need to provide the programs, but also at the same time, take a look at ways on how we can maintain property tax instead of always looking at increasing property taxes as the wherewithal. We should take a look at ways on how we can decrease use of particular resources or other things as well, which I want to get into, like wastewater stuff as well, because I feel like waste management is a part of that process in property taxing as well.
Hopefully we'll get to wastewater.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Shane. My next question has to do with Native Hawaiian issues, current modern Native Hawaiian issues in our county and throughout the state. So my question is, what are your views on the blood quantum requirement to be considered for Department of Hawaiian Homeland's land?
The blood quantum, sorry, what was that?
The blood quantum requirement.
Oh,
Like, what are your
yes.
feelings in regards to that?
Yeah, so I've been a strong advocate for like the past 20 years in lessening the blood quantum. I've done research and spent time with Indian tribes and nations and communities on the continent on how they address blood quantum on a federal level. So again, the blood quantum issue is actually a federal guideline. It wasn't a state mandate. It was more of a federal mandate. And so working with the Department of Hawaiian Homelands from my grassroots efforts through the Hawaiian Civic Club movement, we're looking at twofold. One, we have to get things passed through the state legislation and then get it passed at the congressional level. And so when I take a look at blood quantum issues, we're looking at the depletion of providing homes for one of the largest communities that are struggling with housing, which is the Native Hawaiians. And so if we can, one, address the quantum issue, then what happens is generationally, we won't have to worry as much. The other thing with the blood quantum issue, why I'm pro lessening the blood quantum is because there are people who invest in, who are farmers, who have farmlands and ranch lands on Hawaiian homes that is a huge part, particularly on Hawaii County's economy. And they end up losing their leases because of blood quantum. And so after 3 or 4 generations, these families end up folding up their business, which also hinders our economy as well, as far as the circular economy that happens on the island. So the drawback to that is when we take the issue into the Hawaiian Homes community and have discussions there, some Native Hawaiians have concerns about how they waited for so long, and or their criteria was at 50%, and why should others have a break? And so those discussions come up. At that point, I'm looking, for me personally, I see the value of decreasing blood quantum, 1, for economic reasons, 2, for housing, and 3, it just community overall, it puts people in homes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Speaking of agricultural lands and kind of thinking about land use and development, do you support the rezoning of agricultural lands to residential or commercial lands, and why? If yes or no?
Oh, that's a loaded, yes or no question. So 2 things. Sometimes agriculture, particularly ranch lands, right, you're addressing, or just, ranch lands. I disagree with changing agricultural lands to residential lands. I feel like we have enough lands to survey, and taking a look at our inventory first to assess what kind of inventory we have. I feel that when we take a look at all the different zonings, we have enough places to develop residential. I don't think we need to give up agricultural lands anymore. As far as ranch lands, I would prefer that ranching would stay, for one reason. They're part of conservation as well. Although I part of my restoration efforts, I did learn that sometimes ranching depleted some of our resources, but they also restored a lot of our forests as well. A lot of ranchers do a lot of conservation efforts up in the forest by replanting, reforesting, and making sure that the ecosystems are continuing, the water systems are flowing naturally. They do a lot of work. They're not just raising cattle up there. They do so much more up there so that we can provide, so that we can have the resources, further down near the shorelines. So as we take a look at conversion, land use conversion, I would really take a look at, or have an assessment done, a thorough assessment done on the inventory of land and residential, residential lands versus agriculture, pastoral lands.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Shane. My next question has to do with our circular economy. So tourism will continue on our shores regardless. How can we ensure that the tourism industry is of service to our working families rather than the other way around?
Yes. So growing up in Kealakekua Bay, it's marked throughout the world. Everyone wants to come to Kealakekua Bay, one for many reasons. So we house, and also nearby where I'm a lineal descendant at, which is at Pu'uhono Hononao National Park. They bring in at least over 500,000 tourists a year in the area, which impacts a lot of our very tiny village. And so in order for us to shift that is to redirect tourism so that we can now direct them towards āina-based activities that would feed the āina-based activities. So in other words, if they're spending money in a shopping mall versus spending their money and efforts on an āina-based project or the part of the circular economy, I think shifting that mode would be very helpful with tourism, where we start to bring in or start to market tourism for people to arrive, instead of bucket listing drives to the volcano, they might want to bucket list to a āina project and spend time there. So a little bit more fractional time. As far as resort industry, I think we need to really take a look at how we can manage the resort industry. And what that really means, being in the industry myself, I did yield management, which is occupancy versus revenue management. And I have to say that, they bank on the holiday season when everyone's cold in the mainland, everyone wants to come to Hawaii. And so I feel that we need to shift that. We want everyone to come during the times when we need reforestation, when we need to plant our kalo, when we need to do certain things in the islands versus coming because they're cold in the mainland. I feel that we can shift tourism in that retrospect.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, do you think that the county council has any mechanisms to lever regarding the HTA's involvement in some of these activities? And,
I
whether,
believe so. Yes, the county is the one that offers the permits and or part of the licensing process, as well as far as commercialization to vend or to do anything. And so when we're taking a look at like our small vendors or our ATV rides and stuff like that, they go through a county process as well. I think that what I would probably like, not just with tourism, but with many other aspects between state and county government, there's this slight disconnect between the two governments. One, most people think that the state government drives the county government. The county is chartered by state constitution. However, the county does have the ability and authority to do certain things and also to collaborate. Like nobody has ever collaborated. I've never seen that happen between the two governments. And I feel that we should build, well, I shouldn't say I've never seen that happen. We should build stronger bridges between the two governments. That way we can start syncing, being in more sync to serve our communities effectively. Yeah.
thank you. The next question, shifting into food security. What is your definition of food security or sovereignty for Hawai'i Island? And what or how would you implement programs at the county level to fulfill the statement if you are elected?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think, food security in my definition would mean a resilient sort of economy that's surrounding making sure that our resources are sustained and have co-stewardship or management systems in place. And I feel that the county has the ability to, one, allow for zoning activity or have some zoning authority over where we can implement or secure these sort of regions or areas on the island to promote food security. So food security to me is not just trying to stock up your cabinet. To me, food security means that we need to provide resilient resources in our county. Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on how you would do that and promote access?
Yeah, so, as a county councilman, our main function and duty would be to develop policies that would direct county government actions. And so I would make sure that we're working with community members who are like farmers, ranchers, also conservation effort people. A lot of conservationists actually have lots of ways and how we can maintain resources such as land, soil resource is so important. Our soil is depleted a lot because of runoff and or because of development. And so how do we restore soil? There's so many ways to do that through traditional and also modern methodologies in order to maintain that. And that it all contributes to towards food sovereignty. So looking at how we can improve ways. Right now, the county has very minimal regulations on how we maintain or how we support State Department of Ag's soil conservation efforts. And even providing incentives for them so that they can do more efforts and collaboration with other organizations, so that we can continue. Actually, to me, all of that contributes to the circular economy that we're seeking for our island. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks so much, Shane. My next question for you kind of migrates into climate change mitigation and adaptation. So I was wondering, what are the most exciting opportunities for climate change mitigation jobs in your district right now?
Yeah, the coral restoration project that we're working on has huge opportunity. I've been working with Kamehameha schools and building up access to Arizona State University's local program here in South Kona. And so being able to, one, provide an education process that's congruent or that's acceptable or that will be accepted by our community so that people would want to become educated. And then taking a look at a lot of marine science as well as forest conservation work as well. So not just looking at working in a hotel anymore as you know, or going to work to become an accountant. I think that we can really take a look at how we can provide professional careers that are more āina based and be able to pay them appropriately, which would then be contributing towards our circular economy and also maintaining resources. And so I feel that there's a lot of jobs from teaching to this. In fact, we're looking for teachers for the ASU guys. There's teaching opportunities. There's also the opportunities to merge traditional knowledge. I think that's an important aspect as well as we look at returning to āina-based projects. We're looking at Ike Kupuna and how that plays a huge foundational role in circular economy as well. Looking at community place-based planning as well, which is important piece of how we can develop jobs in those arenas. But yeah, those are the ones that are on top of my head right now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Moving into water and waste, how do you feel about private-public partnerships to address our waste issues, both solid waste and water?
So I feel like if we want to do something efficient, that we should take a look at all of our options and not just be limited to just one particular sector. I also believe in, not that I'm not against private and public partnerships and that merger. I feel that we also have labor unions that are a huge part of our economy as well. I mean, almost 2/3 of my family members that live in Hawaii are all union workers as well, and they provide adequate incomes for these families. So I feel that if we take a look at wastewater, waste management, that has a huge potential of growth in the islands, not just here on Hawai'i Island, but on all the islands, and taking a look at ways and how we could develop jobs that would support that industry to include recycling. I feel that it'll probably be a collaboration, but I would definitely want to take a look at and assess at what would be the most cost efficient way, but not compromise on the production and the value of what the byproduct or the out product of waste management is. Yeah.
Thanks, Shane. My next question has to do with social issues. And I was thinking the other day about the importance of the foster system and how so many issues often occur to these children upon exiting the foster system. And this question kind of has to go along with that. So the foster system is currently overwhelmed, and 25% of youth end up houseless within 2 years of exiting the foster system. This often feeds into other social issues such as drug abuse, sex trafficking, and more. What can we do to resolve this?
Yeah, fostering is a huge, fostering is not new to Hawaii. Hanai, I was Hanai myself, growing up in a single family household myself. My mom had a hard time, and there are times where I had to go live with my uncles or my aunties, and sometimes, so that fostering was quite normal, but I feel that the economy had put a crunch on the ohana system at this point. And so taking on fostering other families is really hard and rough. I think that if yeah, this one hits hard for me. Sorry. I don't really know if there's one particular answer or one solution to foster kids, or foster kids exiting the program. And sometimes they're so taxed. Foster families are taxed with just hurry up and get out. Or they're taxed to where they're overwhelmed with other foster kids entering as well. I don't think the solution to that issue is to just build more foster homes. I feel that there needs to be more on reconstructing the ohana system in our communities, so that we can provide spaces for these children, so that they can grow up without just surviving, but be able to have dreams, be able to think clearly, and be able to make greater decisions. And so if we can restore the construct of the ohana system, and not just in Native Hawaiian families, but make that all family households, I feel that that would be the first step, the first move to addressing the drug problems, to address the foster care issues, and all the different crimes that you mentioned. Yeah. The houselessness, homelessness issues. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Alexia?
Cool. Last one. Thanks for sharing that, Shane. I think we already know your answer to this, but maybe that'll give you an opportunity to elaborate further. Coral growth depends on successful fertilization and attachment. Would you support closing public beaches in West Hawaii for a few days each year during coral spawning to facilitate coral growth?
Absolutely. Working on it right now. Yes. And it's important that so I want to say this though, I don't want to just shut it down without providing proper education, proper outreach, and understanding what the repercussions are, knowing what we're going to lose if we shut that down. So just because we shut someplace down, we might be shutting off some tour or something else that's some fishing industry or something that might be impacted negatively. So we need to assess before we shut down. Yes, I do support it, but I also want to know what the negative impacts to shutting down would be as well, because I feel that we need to find that balance first before we fully shut down someplace. Yeah. Yes, and so working on carrying capacity on the environment versus carrying capacity on a place is important to me. Yeah.
Michaela, would you like to ask one last question? We still have a few minutes left.
Yes, I have more questions that have to do with infrastructure. So I've asked a few other candidates for different seats and positions on this question before, but I'm always curious to know what each person's perspective would be, since we are shifting more into sustainable energy. Several current electric vehicle charging stations around the island have been found to be inoperative for long periods of time. How
Yes.
would you work to help develop an adequate network to keep pace with the demand for more chargers and a means to ensure that they stay maintained and safely accessible?
So I just had a conversation last week with the State Department of Trans and the National Park Service on our island, in how we can actually provide long-term maintenance and service so that we have operable chargers around the island. And taking a look at what the requirements was, I think it was like a 15 to 18 mile distance. When we take a look at our national park services, they have that ability, or they have that space, at least on the west side of the island. I'm not sure on the east side, but taking a look at, but just having that type of conversation and understanding where we need to take a look at locations to set up charging stations, and how would that be sustained, and how would that, and is the National Park Service willing to take on that responsibility perpetually? And so those conversations are taking place right now, actually, at least for the west side. I do know that having conversations with the Po'akuloa training area, they were taking a look at hydrogen gas, I think, at some point versus electric. And they were looking at doing a station up there as well for alternative energy. But they have other issues as well regarding like their leases and stuff like that that's happening. But I think that I agree that we need to understand like what that means. Like if we want to start moving towards that, towards what you call more cleaner energy, especially trying to cut back on emissions, I feel that when we look at the geography of our island, we also have to look at where the density population is located. So we're looking at places like Kohala, which is off sort of the kind of out in its own area, and Hamakua is not part of the main track anymore because we have the Saddle Road. So we also have to strategically look at areas where we want to put these stations and who will be responsible for it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shane.
Yeah.
We really appreciate you joining us tonight, and hope you do well in your endeavor to grab that county council seat number 6.
Yes.
At HULI PAC, we're building something that the political establishment's never seen, a slate of Pono leaders. Please visit hulipac.com. We would appreciate any donations that you can make. And that's HULI PAC, HULIHI.com, HULIHI.com. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Aloha, everyone.